Well, let's begin. Although we have a legislature here in Manitoba, one Winnipegger thinks the Manitoba Legislative Building could have more representation, at least when it comes to art. This is the art show I was referring to off the top of the hour here. Winnipegger Claire Normandeau is curating the Leg's first ever Indigenous art exhibit. But they need artists. Claire spoke with Up to Speed host Faith Fundal.
What made you want to take something like this on? You're a cultural studies student at the U of W. You've been the manager of visitor tours. Why this, of all things?
Yeah, so I feel like it kind of speaks to both my professional and academic experience. So I finished the cultural studies curatorial focus last spring, and that really taught me a lot about curating, of course, and just kind of how to engage community in those projects. I've also worked in the building for 9 years now, coming up on 9 years in December. So that always felt like an absence that was there. Just where are the Indigenous voices? Where are those stories? How do we approach them in a good way?
Did anyone answer those questions, or did anyone have an answer to those questions when you asked?
Oh, there's never been an easy answer, right? And it's just not easy history to contend with and engage with. So I think it's really important that in any institutions that we have a role to take on that work and to do it in a good, meaningful way.
The legislative building is the place where they make laws and regulations. In itself has many laws and regulations. Was it hard to convince the Ledge folks that this was something that needed to be done and that you were the person?
No, actually. And I'll speak to that. So I'm part of the Legislative Assembly. So we're nonpartisan, and our role is, in my office anyways, to build a bridge for Manitobans to make them feel welcome, seen, and included in that space. And I will say my directors were very happy to take this on, which was awesome news for me. I was really excited to do it. So I'm really happy to be in the position I am.
You're calling it the exhibit At the Heart of This Land.
Yeah.
What's the significance of the name?
So the idea kind of came to me in knowing the building so well. So within kind of that neoclassical context, if anyone's been to the building, if not, come on a tour. But in the center, there's a star. So it's an Egyptian star, an Egyptian symbol. We call it the Pool of the Black Star. And there's a really interesting acoustic effect. So when you stand in the very center of it, your voice is amplified. So I just thought, what a beautiful space, just the building itself. What a nice space to raise Indigenous voices, to elevate those voices, to give a platform. And I thought art would be a really good way to do it.
In all ways, literally and figuratively. When did you discover this spot?
When I was a tour guide my first summer, I guess, in training. So, I mean, I started out as a summer tour guide in 2017 now, which, oh my gosh. And yeah, so part of our training was just kind of learning about the building, engaging with the building. And I think that was my first impression of, okay, now where are the Indigenous voices? And then, I'm very lucky to be the manager of that program now and to have the experience I do academically. And it feels like such a perfect marriage of all those thoughts I've had over the years.
What kind of art are you looking for?
We're really open, actually, to different types of submissions. So it could be painting, photography, sculpture, beadwork.
Could it be music?
It could, in theory, yes. It could be music. It could be video. And we'd find a way to display that. Yeah.
You've had submissions open for a month now. What have you heard so far? Or what do you make of what the submissions have been like?
Yeah, so we've gotten a few. We've gotten a lot of traction, artists with questions. So that's been really, really awesome. And now we're hoping to get more. We expect to get kind of a big influx at the end, the closing deadline, which is this Friday. So if this is new to you and you're listening and you know someone or you're interested, we would love to see your work. There's no prerequisite. You could be a career artist, a new artist, a hobby artist. So we want to see your work.
What were you expecting when you put the call out? What were your expectations about who might, or the number of folks that might say, hey, here's the thing for me?
I had and continue to have no idea what to expect. This is all new for me. My first big curatorial project outside of school. And I'm learning every single day. So we'll see what we get. I'm happy with whatever we can get and however community wants to engage with this project.
Talk about what you hope the exhibit will do in the context of reconciliation and decolonization.
Yeah, I hope it can offer a space to have discussions and to learn, to educate about the reconciliation process. In terms of the Legislative Assembly as an institution, as an entity, this is just a first step. We want to continue to engage in that work, and we'll continue to do projects like this in years moving forward. But I think in the cultural space, I think that's where my voice can be used for this, and I hope that it can help to bring light to these discussions in all areas.
I'm hopeful that that spot you were talking about that amplifies your voice, that you find something that can be put in that spot, because that's a pretty. It sounds like literally sounds like a really neat spot.
It's a really cool spot. Yeah. So we originally wanted to have the show just in that space. And then in terms of accessibility, it's not accessible. So we wanted to make sure that we can adjust that space as necessary. So maybe in future, that would be really cool. And otherwise, it's still a feature in the building, and we'll point it out. But maybe we can work something out. We'll have to see, and we'll see what we get for submissions too.
And of course, if people have never gotten a tour, I'm raising my hand. I'm going to be calling and coming for a visit. Claire, thank you for this. We should ask you, where can artists go to learn more about how to submit?
Absolutely. So all of the information about this project is on our website. So if you just look up Manitoba Legislative Assembly, go to Visitor Tour Program, and there's a banner right at the top of the page, At the Heart of This Land. Click on it. There's a full info page, and submissions can be sent to an email address, which is exhibitions, EXHIBITIONS, at mbassembly.ca by this Friday.
So that's Winnipegger Claire Normandeau in conversation with Up to Speed host Faith Fundal. Claire is the curator behind the At the Heart of This Land, the Indigenous art exhibit that they are hoping to put up at the Manitoba Legislative Building. Again, if you're an artist and you're listening, that deadline is on Friday. You might be watching the Jets face Washington tonight, and that means you're also going to be watching a lot of ads for online betting, which continue to increase in our feeds. Now, last year, CBC Marketplace reported during a broadcast, gambling ads were on screen about 20% of the time. Now, a group of senators wants to bring that number to zero. A letter addressed to the Prime Minister and signed by more than 40 senators is calling for a complete ban on all sports gambling advertising in Canada. To talk about it, we have one of the letter's authors with us. Senator Marty Deacon is with us, representing Waterloo, Ontario. She is in Ottawa. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So why a full ban? There's been a lot of legislative efforts up to this point. Why are you calling for a full ban?
Yes, and so those legislative efforts, that would be legislation that we have been working on for 2.5 years to develop a national framework to address advertising. And we were asking for, a reduction in advertising across the country and a standard. And that is still in process. That bill has been accepted twice unanimously in the Senate and is now in the House. And then while that is going on, this letter to the Prime Minister we sent, signed by 40 senators, asking for a full ban. And it was difficult to consider a full ban when I was doing a private member's bill in the Senate. There are some charter implications. We learned a lot from tobacco in the 90s and advertising. And we weren't sure if a full ban made it in the time that we wanted to get it into the House. It's there now. And then this letter says this is a serious issue. We're continuing to receive more data in Canada that this is very harmful, particularly for young adults, particularly between the ages of 18 to 29, who are have that fix to gamble over and over again based on the advertising.
The Canadian Gaming Association, as you're aware, has responded to similar criticism in the past by pointing out that the sports gambling advertisements are decreasing and make up a relatively, they say, small portion of the ads on television. They say they're heavily regulated, and they say to blame problems with gambling on them would be, quote, naive. What's your response to that?
Thank you. And I do certainly respect the work of the Gaming Commission, and we do communicate and listen to different perspectives. The reality is Ontario has chosen to allow multiple private sector operators. And what this does is it pits pits each operator against each other and need for the drive for lots and lots of advertising. These operators are buying media time wherever they can, including national media, sport broadcasts, whose signals spill over into other provinces where they're not licensed to operate. And it's the number of ads, but also the placement of ads. Broadcasters are offering all sorts of betting advice during a match. And the revenues, they did have a dip, but as soon as sports came back in the fall, the revenues are back up significantly. So either more people are betting or the same amount of people are betting more. When we look across the country, it's a patchwork. We have alcohol and tobacco have national advertising regulations. Why would sport betting be an exception when the harms continue to be improving? Our celebrities are still out there. Our kids love these celebrities, even though there's a statement at the end. They are very, very hooked into what the belief of success.
You mentioned tobacco and other regulations and questioning why we're not following suit in the same way with gaming and gambling. Why target the ads and not the gambling companies themselves?
Yeah, and so in targeting the ads, what we're doing is we're trying to go back. We had this bill in 2021 where in Canada we legalized single sport betting, which opened this. And that single sport betting we did for a number of reasons that we were trying to address with respect to black markets and out of country, a whole bunch of things. But we didn't address the advertising. And so as a senator whose job is to make these bills the best they can be, we're trying to address it from that perspective. Going after gambling companies, well, when this gets through and gets through the House and a framework is set up, that will be at the choice of the stakeholders and the experts at the table moving this forward, moving the best decision forward. And it could be a full ban. It may come out to something else, but that is where something like that would be considered.
Have you heard back? You have not heard back from the Prime Minister yet. Do you think that he'll support a ban? Do you have any sense of how the response is going to be from him or what the response might be?
I would hope, and I hope response would be that recognition absolutely of the growing concern of this and the commitment to trying to move forward on this as soon as possible and get the right people at the table to move forward with the best decision that works to address the health of this the health of our young people.
I know your letter is calling for CRTC regulation. Would ads on social media also be targeted?
That could very well be, and that's where we look at the table and who's at that table and how we can be addressing that. When there are some things that I understand that can be blocked, and there are ads, as you know, everywhere. So that's where it will have to be really, really, really itemized and quite clear and concise.
Thank you for telling us about your ask in the letter, Senator Deacon. Appreciate your time today.
You take care. Have a great day.
You as well. That's Senator Marty Deacon representing Waterloo, Ontario, joining us this morning from Ottawa. We are now officially 100 days away from the 2026 Paralympic Winter Games in Milan Cortina, Italy. For athletes, that time's going to fly by, a quick sprint to the opening ceremonies. The rest of us have an equally important job, though, to bring the excitement and cheer Team Canada on, whether that's rinkside or from your living room. For a closer look at the Games, we have Stef Reid with us. She's a 3-time Paralympic medalist. She is also part of CBC's Paralympic broadcasting team. She's joining us today from the UK. Hello there.
Good morning.
So tell us a little bit about what we're in for the 50th anniversary of the Paralympic Winter Games, actually.
It is going to be so exciting. I think my absolute favorite thing about these games is that for the Winter Paralympics in general is that for most of history, if somebody with a disability, say an artificial leg or a visual impairment or a spinal injury said, I want to do sport, I mean, the last thing that you would think to do is to send them down a mountain skiing at crazy speeds or have them body checking each other on a sled in sledge hockey. But that is exactly what you're going to see at the Paralympics. And there's going to be athletes that have to have both incredible skill technically. They have to be fearless. And do you know what? They have to be a little bit crazy.
Tell me a little bit about your experience as a competitor. 100 days out, what might the athletes be feeling, and what does the prep look like? Because as I said, this will go by very quickly for the athletes.
It's so interesting to look at it now from the perspective of a broadcaster and a fan, as opposed to when I was competing. Because right now, for me, as a fan, this is so exciting. I'm digging into the stories and reading about the rivalries and looking at the different venues. However, I know that if I was an athlete, the 100-day countdown mark would simply pass by as any other day. And, sure, maybe I would take a small moment just to smile and think about how exciting it is that I'm about to live out this dream and this goal that I have had for years and years. But then I would have to shut that door because there's still work to be done. And I just have to focus. And that's a skill that all athletes have to have. In addition to being technically sound, you have to be able to control those emotions in your environment.
What are you watching, like in terms of, you said rivalries and athletes, so who are you watching and excited to see?
Oh, well, I don't think that we can talk about rivalries without mentioning sledge hockey. Now, Canada has done really well in the past 2 Winter Paralympics. They have won silver. However, the USA has taken gold the last 4 times, and it is high time for someone else. And the good news is that the last time Canada won the gold was actually in Torino in 2006, 20 years ago. So it feels like a really good sign that Canada is going back to a country where they've had lots of success.
You did cover the 2024 Paris Summer Games as a broadcaster as well, Stephanie. Tell us a little bit about those games, because they were huge in terms of both viewership and hype. How hopeful are you that things can be matched in Milan?
Oh, you're right. They were huge. It was so exciting. It was it was the biggest games ever in terms of coverage around the world and views and audience members hit. And I just hope for more of the same at these Winter Games. I think one of the most exciting things about parasport right now is its rate of growth and the amount of interest in the sport. And, why wouldn't you be? Why would you not want to tune in and watch a visually impaired skier fly down a mountain at 100 kilometers an hour with a guide in their ear, simply with a 2-way headset telling them which way to turn? It is crazy and it's exciting. But the thing is, as an audience member, as a fan, you can't fall in love with a sport that you can't see on a regular basis and that you may not understand. And so that is exactly what's going to happen at these games. And it's just going to help these sports grow even more and these athletes become household names.
All right. Thanks for this morning, Steph. Appreciate your time.
My absolute pleasure.
That's Stef Reid, part of CBC's Paralympic broadcasting team, 3-time Paralympic medalist. And remember, we're going to be getting up at 2 a.m. Well, we're already up in the morning show to bring you that live coverage, and you can check it out online and all of our platforms once the games begin. A Winnipeg mom, as I've mentioned, says that security personnel are now patrolling in front of her child's daycare during pickups and drop-offs. She says it's because of an encampment located directly across from the Building Blocks daycare on Balmoral. Now, that daycare is operated by the YMCA. It faces Most in Place. That's Most in Place Park, rather. That's along Granite Way. Her name is Sonia. CBC has agreed to withhold her last name to protect her child's identity. Sonia says that the encampment in the park has grown significantly since her 4-year-old son started at the daycare 3 years ago. She says the city's new restrictions on encampments have not made any difference. It has just been over a week since the city's new rules came into effect. They prohibit encampments within 50 meters of schools, playgrounds, and daycares during the day. That camp is, though, still there. Cynthia Flett has been living there since the spring.
They don't want me here. They just have to find me a place to go or take me somewhere to go stay, because I don't know where else to go. I don't have family here and I don't have that much friends. If they tell me to leave and find me a place to live, I'll leave.
So in case that was difficult to make out, that Cynthia Flett talking about living there and saying if they find me a place to leave, I'll leave, but she has nowhere else to go. Here is what the City of Winnipeg's acting manager of community development, Greg McPherson, said about why there's been no enforcement in that space.
The number of units that would be required for that site is fairly substantial. We want to be sure to make people those good offers and have something in hand when we visit them and ask them to move on. we want to be able to support them in that move. So I think that's it's more complex than I wish it was.
That was the City of Winnipeg's Acting Manager of Community Development, Greg McPherson. So lots of context and perspectives on this. Let's now talk to Sonia about her concerns over her son's daycare. She joins us this morning. Hi there.
Hi there. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So can you describe what the encampment looks like and, how close it is to where your son goes to daycare?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of context on that. And I don't typically do drop off, which is why yesterday I just felt so compelled to reach out, because I was taken aback at how it had developed over the last few months. The daycare center is basically behind the Canada Life building, and right across the street is an apartment block, and then the park and the encampment. So it's right across the street.
And I had said in the introduction that you have noticed, because you don't, as you said, normally do drop off, that there's been some growth in the camp over the last 4 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It has not been there for 4 years. I think it's been a few months. It's been a few months since I stopped doing drop off in the mornings. And then yesterday I saw it, and it did take me aback. And I've lived in the village, I've lived in the West End, worked in the village, even lived in Manitoba housing. Encampments are not new to me. I've seen them across the city, but this one just took me aback due to the fact that it's right beside the daycare.
What is it about having the encampment right there that concerns you specifically regarding safety?
It's about safety, but also I think just the juxtaposition between having, a daycare center with 100 kids and then the living conditions that these folks have to deal with on the other side. It just those two things don't work well together, and it's really unsettling to see.
I'm just trying to understand why not. So is it the mess, or is it needles, or is it the nature of the people and what they might, be individually? I'm trying to get a sense of what concerns you about the mix.
Yeah, I think partly it's safety. There's been a number of fires in the last few weeks. Especially as temperatures get colder, that's probably a higher risk of that continuing to happen. And part of it too is just, exposure to some of that hard life that we don't want kids necessarily to see.
I understand there's been some examples about how the encampment being right there has actually impacted the daycare's activities, like what they do with the kids. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They used to go for frequent walks along the green space to the ledge and the surrounding parks, but they don't do as many walks anymore.
What are you hearing from staff at the daycare and other parents?
The staff at the daycare is amazing. It's a really well-run daycare center, so I have nothing but praise for them. They're doing the best that they can in the situation, and that's pretty much all.
CBC reached out to the city, as you heard there. There's 15 or so people living there. Some of them have nowhere else to go. It's a complex issue. How do you hope the city deals with this?
So it is a complex issue. And then I heard you reference, enforcement of the new bylaw. And I don't think that this issue is about enforcement. It's about support. We've had a plan in Winnipeg to address the issue of inadequate housing for the last 10 years with a view to end homelessness by 2025. And I think we're going the opposite direction, which clearly indicates that there is a lack of support required, and what we're doing isn't working. So maybe there's new rules that are in effect, but I don't think the solution is going to be to dismantle the encampment and then maybe move it along somewhere else. That's not I don't think that's the appropriate way to deal with it, noting that it is a complex issue, but the encampment didn't grow to 15 people overnight. It's been there for months, and it's only now that it is being regarded as high priority.
I know you said you started noticing security around the daycare. When did that security presence begin?
Well, I've noticed it twice, and I asked my husband, and he said he's noticed it the last few weeks.
Okay. Can you confirm who put the security there? Because we've had some challenges confirming it. I'm going to read what the daycare said to us in a moment, but do you know who hired the security?
I'm pretty sure it's security for Canada Life that just monitors the premises, but they might focus a bit more time around the childcare center during drop-off and pickup hours. I don't think it's specifically for this reason. I think it's always been there, but just the focus around the childcare center has been more lately.
Okay, that's for us to confirm, and we certainly will look into that today as well. How does it make you feel that there are some security measures, though, in the meantime there?
I think it's a good step to secure the safety of the children, but I don't really think it addresses the underlying issue. It's a way to maybe accommodate a need in the near term, but it really doesn't affect the underlying issues and how we solve for that.
What's it like right now? I just wanted you to weigh in maybe on what's it like right now. I feel like in Winnipeg, people are having a struggle even articulating, having concerns about encampments because they may be sort of labeled, someone that doesn't have, any empathy or understanding for those that are living homeless in the city. And yet there are some concerns, as you've outlined, your concerns from a parental point of view. What's it like being stuck, right now, frankly, in our city where, as I said, this is not such a simple issue where it's like one side or the other?
Yeah, and honestly, I'm coming from it from a standpoint of a parent, but also as a human being. Like I said, I've noticed that encampments are growing. I think we've all noticed it. And before, it used to be something that you could say, oh, it's specific to this area. But the fact that we haven't addressed this as a community speaks volumes. And I don't think that you have to be on one side or the other. I think we need to be on the same side to make sure that everybody in the community is supported, that kids are protected, but also that people who require the supports are able to get it, able to access housing. We've talked about plans for housing, plans for wraparound supports, but it doesn't seem like it's come to fruition. So I don't know if it's just a lack of speed or how we can get there, but what we're doing right now is not working, and I think it needs to be a more urgent priority.
What changes do you hope might come out of you publicly speaking out about this, just back to the local situation that's happening around your son's daycare?
I think now with the new bylaw, there's going to be a lot of focus on, let's call it enforcement. But I think what I would like to see is a concrete plan of how we're going to support the people that need to be moved. I listened to that voice bit from Cynthia, and it's heartbreaking to know that we live in Canada in 2025 and that people are still struggling daily to find a safe place to live.
Really appreciate your perspective this morning, Sonia. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a great day.
Sonia is a local mom, Winnipegger. She's concerned about the encampment across from her child's daycare, as you said, and about the overall issue about what's happening with encampments. Now, CBC did reach out to the YMCA. They operate the Building Blocks Childcare Center. That's right across from Moston Park Place, where Sonia's son goes. They declined to comment on any security measures at this time. In a statement, they said it's aware of the encampment located in close proximity to the daycare, adding, quote, "The safety of the children in our care and their families is always our top priority, and it's with that in mind that we brought forward concerns regarding the encampment to the attention of the City of Winnipeg and the Winnipeg Police Services in the past few months. We feel assured that they will continue to monitor and respond, and we encourage anyone that witnesses concerning behavior at this location to please relay the information directly to the Winnipeg Police Services," unquote. If you want to read more, as we have our ongoing coverage, we're just a week into these new rules in Winnipeg. We also asked the mayor about other plans from other cities and whether he'd consider maybe more transitional encampments or a permanent spot for folks. So we're going to see how our city progresses with all of this. But if you want to weigh in, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, to read more, and you can weigh in on our listener line at 788-3205. Some people say that taking cannabis helps them to drink less, but experts say that people who mix weed with booze generally have worse outcomes with both. Now, in a first-of-its-kind study that's published this month in the American Journal of Psychiatry, researchers looked at the effects of cannabis on alcohol consumption. To talk about how they did that, Dr. Bhardwaj is here with our medical column. Hi.
Good morning, Marcy.
So tell us about this study. What were the researchers doing?
Yeah, so basically these researchers from Brown University in Rhode Island, they were looking for some clarity around alcohol use and cannabis use and how one affects the other, because there's some contradictory thinking and some contradictory evidence out there. So on the one hand, there's lots of research that shows that people who use cannabis and alcohol together or one after the other, they tend to use more of each, or at least have, more problems with things like alcohol and cannabis use disorder and overuse or addiction. Also, there's lots of evidence that people who are in treatment for alcohol use don't do as well if they're still using cannabis. On the flip side, though, there's this idea that, some people use cannabis to lower their alcohol consumption, or even use cannabis instead of alcohol, which is this idea of California sober, which is, getting more and more popular since cannabis is legalized, right? So the researchers wanted to sort out, what do people actually do? Does using cannabis and then drinking alcohol change the amount of alcohol that people drink? And the researchers predicted that people who use cannabis and then drink would end up drinking more.
What did they do to answer that question?
So Marcy, if you're picturing having people smoke up and then letting them loose in a bar, you've pretty much got the right idea. So they recruited 157 volunteers who used cannabis at least twice a week for the last 6 months, and also who drank at least 4 or 5 drinks in one sitting at least once a month for the past year. Basically, they wanted people who were familiar with both alcohol and cannabis use and used them both fairly regularly. So these folks were invited to the lab 3 times, and each time they came, they were given a different strength of cannabis. The cannabis they were provided was either 7.2% THC, 3.1% THC, or 0.03% THC, which is basically a placebo. So after they smoked up, when they smoked up, first of all, they were put in this little room, a smoking room. They were given their joint, and they were, they had to put on headphones. And the headphones, they were instructed on how to smoke this, like, inhale this long, hold it for this long, breathe out, do it again. So the idea was that they all inhaled for the same amount of time and the same number of puffs and stuff. After that, they were let loose in a mock bar for a few hours to see how much they would drink after smoking. So this was not your neighborhood pub. This was actually part of the lab that the researchers actually set up with, comfy chairs and dim lighting, and they made it look like a bar. And they stocked it with each volunteer's favorite alcohol. And then they watched the people, and they watched how long did it take before they started drinking, how many times did they have a drink, how much did they drink, all sorts of things.
What did they find?
So compared to when they smoked the placebo cannabis, if they were smoking the 3.1% THC cannabis, they actually drank about 19% less alcohol. And if they were smoking the 7.2% cannabis joint, the stronger stuff, they actually drank 27% less alcohol compared to placebo. They also found that when people smoked the stronger joint, they waited longer on average before helping themselves to a drink, about 33 minutes instead of 22 minutes compared to the placebo. And this was the first of its kind of study. It's a placebo-controlled experiment. It's not just a survey. It's not just, we'll, quietly observe and hope we can figure out patterns. We're going to change something in there in the experiment and see how that affects another thing. So because of that experimental design, this study provides some pretty strong evidence that smoking cannabis, at least in the short term, over a few hours, can help to reduce how much alcohol a person drinks. So it seems to back up that notion behind the sort of California sober term, right? So people sometimes will use cannabis to avoid alcohol.
How do you think that translates into the real world?
Yeah, so this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So first of all, even the researchers who did the study, they were pretty quick to point out that this does not mean that people who are looking to avoid or decrease their alcohol use should use cannabis instead. right? This is not what the study was studying. And, for one thing, this was a super short term, right? It was like a couple of hours of follow-up. So you can't make that sort of conclusion. But three things that jumped out at me when I was reading this paper. So first of all, the strength of the cannabis that they used, right? The highest, the strongest was 7.1% THC. That's really low. I mean, in Canada, 35% THC is often available. The second thing is that the researchers went to great pains, to build this mock-up of a lab, of a bar, I should say, in their lab, and stock it with alcohol, all that stuff. But that's not the same. That's not the same as drinking at a real bar with other people, right? People who might make it more likely or less likely that you're going to drink. And then the third was, even though this was a super controlled study, maybe because it was a super controlled study, people smoked up first, then they drank. There was no overlap. There was no re-upping their cannabis hit, right? And in real life, that's often not the case. Often people, they smoke, they go to the bar, then they go outside, they have another smoke, they come back in, So there are some factors here that make it hard to translate these directly to real world situations. But it certainly gives us some evidence that using cannabis might actually reduce alcohol consumption. It is interesting though, when you drill down into the individual data points, there were some people, some volunteers who ended up drinking more when they used the stronger cannabis, not less. So this also isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. The real world of substance use rarely is.
So before you go this morning, beyond the study, I'm just curious whether or not it's a good trade-off, pot for booze.
Yeah, so if you consider that the harms of alcohol use tend to be more serious than the harms of cannabis use in general, then maybe if we got more people to stop or, at least replace some of their drinking with cannabis, maybe that would be a net win for society. But the harder question, I think, is, are people actually going to swap one for the other, or are they just going to use both? Right? So it's great that cannabis is less harmful than alcohol for many people, but that doesn't mean that it's harmless. Right? So, I see patients who use cannabis and who have problems with anxiety or paranoia. I see people who end up accelerating their cannabis use, whether that's over the days or over the years. And then they have a very hard time trying to kick their cannabis habit. So there's a lot of research looking for better answers and more evidence to those sorts of issues. But for now, I think it's best to know your limits when it comes to both alcohol and cannabis use, and reach out for help if it seems that either, cannabis or alcohol or both is getting in the way of important things in your life.
All right, Dr. Bhardwaj, thank you.
My pleasure.
That is our medical column on CBC, and Dr. Bhardwaj. Violent incidents on transit buses, as you've been hearing in the news, have increased by over 280% since 2018. Those numbers are from a joint investigation between CBC News and the Investigative Journalism Foundation. Their data shows that Winnipeg had the highest increase of violent incidents among all 8 major cities that they looked at. This includes Montreal, Hamilton, Kitchener-Waterloo, Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. We're at the top of the list. The investigation shows in 2024 there were 286 incidents, and a Freedom of Information request made to the Winnipeg Police Service shows the majority were downtown. Janice Lukes is councillor for Waverley West and chair of the Public Works Committee. She says she is not surprised where these incidents are happening.
Sure, there's addictions all over the city. There's crime all over the city. But the concentration of it is in these areas. And this is reflective of what's going on our buses in these areas. When you ask for where's the crime that the police are dealing with, I'm sure if it broke it down to neighborhoods, that would be the high concentration.
Next on the program, we're joined live by Chris Scott. He's the president of the Amalgamated Transit Unit, Local 1505. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thank you for having me on the show.
What do you make of these numbers?
Well, unfortunately, they're not surprising and quite disturbing to know that we are the leader of the pack again for the wrong reason. Certainly indicates that our fight is far from over. We have had some successes in implementing some safety measures in recent years. The safety officers, the newest program with officers on the bus, our existing shields, which we're fighting to improve, but the battle is far from over.
Can we stay there for a moment? How are you fighting to improve the shields? What do you want them to be like?
Well, what we want to see is a full operator compartment enclosure. We want that from floor to ceiling, from the modesty panel behind the operator, all the way to the windshield. The shields that we have now, at the time they were implemented, served their purpose, and that was to prevent people coming up and sucker punching the operator. But now assailants are reaching around the shield, sometimes grabbing the steering wheel, which puts everybody at risk, both inside and outside the bus. So we want to fully enclose the operator to make sure they can stay focused on their responsibilities.
As a driver.
Yes. And unfortunately with that, we also don't want the violence to transition over to the public.
So let's talk about that, because you mentioned what's on the bus here, and that is the community safety officers that are there. The city launched that safety team in February last year, 2024. So by the numbers, there was a 9% drop in violent incidents in 2024 compared to 2023. So by the other numbers, it's 286 incidents, where before there had been 314. We have another clip from Councillor Lukes here, because she says she thinks this could be a sign the added security on buses is making a difference.
I know for sure from the data that's coming in from the transit safety team that they're making positive strides. So yeah, I would say that the 2024 decrease is due to that. I really look forward to see what happens with the fare enforcement and with the cops being on the bus. Like, I think we're going to see a dramatic change. The bus drivers now are telling us, yes, this is amazing, right? The fare enforcement, when it's happening at the various stations, they're telling me it's night and day.
So there's a few things there. There's a safety team, there's cops coming, there's the fare enforcement. What are your thoughts on what she said there about what is working and what could be working better from your point of view?
Well, we did see that drop in the number of acts of violence on the service when the safety team came into place, but that has we're now long past the honeymoon period on that. This year we are on pace to break the record of violent incidents on the bus that was set in 2023. We do hope that the fare enforcement project and the officers on the bus cap this increase. Since those two projects this year have been implemented, we have seen a month-to-month reduction on the number of notifications that we get for violence on the bus. And the safety officers, part of their success is the preventative aspect that they do. They do some deterrent, but the majority of it is preventative aspects. And they get people that are suffering from either insecurities such as food or housing or addictions to resources that can help them. But there is the deterrent aspect, which they do to a degree, and the officers are obviously most responsible for.
As you heard, the FIPA from the Winnipeg Freedom of Information request from the Winnipeg Police shows downtown is where the majority of these violent incidents are happening. What do you hope to see improved to change that? And how did that sit with you when you heard that piece of data? Does that match with what you might have been hearing from drivers?
Well, we are aware that a majority of the incidents happen in the downtown area, and unfortunately, with that, the low-income areas of the city. That is part of the problem that we need to address. We need to think outside the box and get resources for people, such as housing. The low-income housing initiative that the province has started is a big step forward. The increased detention times, because no longer are we detaining people for just alcohol intoxication. A lot of these substances that people have unfortunately felt that they needed to cope with their situation last a lot longer. And when they're coming down from these highs, they're a danger to themselves as well as the public out there. So the increased attention for those cases, because they provide care and resources during that period, I think is going to be a big step to help get people cleaned off these substances, and then they can start into picking themselves up. It's unfortunate that this trend has escalated as a result of the pandemic. Our numbers clearly indicate that the pandemic has resulted in an increase in these acts of violence because people that were getting by just fine, they lost their job because many businesses had to shut down. Perhaps they lost their residence.
So
and
I'm just going to
now living on
interject.
the
So
street.
I'm just going to interject. So your sense of it is that there's just that there was a renewed sense of maybe what people's lives, got more maybe desperate, maybe challenging, and that it's reflecting a population now that is also in some different points of crisis.
Yeah, that is correct. We want to work on the preventative aspect to stop these acts of violence from occurring in the first place, and getting people that would act out in these instances the resources they need. I think would be a big step. It's great to have deterrence to say, if you act out violently on transit, these are the consequences of it. But ultimately, I don't want a single one of my members assaulted or a single member of the riding public and
So you're
witnessing or involved in an act of violence.
So you're looking at this through a bigger picture lens.
Yeah, we're a force too. We can't just focus on my members. We have to, and ultimately we need to care about the riding public and the system in general. Without the riding public, we don't have a service, and without a healthy transit system, the city suffers.
In the short term, just before you go this morning, and we have about a minute left here, but what is one thing that can be done in the short term, though, to make everybody safer on the bus right now? What's top of the list?
Well, everybody safer. I think it would have to be the continued vigilance of the safety officers and the police officers on the buses. I have heard from several people, both riding public and operators, that they see these people on the bus, they feel safer. And the plainclothes aspect of that police initiative is a big item, because the next best thing to having a cop on every bus is thinking that person sitting next to you may be an officer.
Thank you very much, Chris Scott, for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Chris Scott, President of Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1505. Winnipeg Transit and the Winnipeg Police declined to comment. For more on the story, you can read cbc.ca/Manitoba. It took a lot of red tape for Brad Wallace to decorate for Christmas this year. People in his neighborhood know him best as the McAdam Santa. That's because he lives on McAdam in the Garden City neighborhood, and he goes all out for Christmas. It doesn't hurt that he's got a big white beard, and he dresses up as Santa, and he puts lights all over his home and outside all over his yard. The showstopper, though, are these beautiful light arches. They're over the sidewalk of his front home this year, and you can hear him ringing the bells. Brad is standing underneath the arches this morning, dressed as Santa. But to get them to stay up, he's had to navigate some Yuletide bureaucracy. And as you can hear, he joins us now. Hi there, Brad.
Hello. Good morning. Oh, it is fine, wonderful morning.
Before we get into the not so jolly bylaw that you've been facing, can I ask you a bit about what we're seeing on Zoom here today? Like, you're under these arches. What did you make them out of?
Well, they're actually made out of Schedule 40 PVC half-inch pipe and 3/4-inch pipe wrapped in Christmas lights and rebar in the ground. And and of course, they took forever to make and 3 days to install.
And so when you walk under them, it's almost like you're in a lit tunnel there over top of the sidewalk.
It actually is. At night, it's beautiful. The daytime, I turn the lights on, but it really doesn't do justice. It literally is a tunnel. And because our street is nice and dark at night, it literally lights up the whole sidewalk. And we've got a brand new sidewalk and a brand new street, so everything is reflecting perfectly. The only thing we're missing is a little bit of snow on the ground.
Yeah, we sure are. So how many of those arches do you have, and what's the span of it? Does it go all the way in front of the public sidewalk in front of your property, or how long is it?
Well, it's the entire length of my property. Actually, I'm borrowing a little bit of the neighbor's property. Let me check. Yeah, I'm in 10 feet into their property, but that's okay. The total length is 55 feet long. and they're 9 feet wide from 2 feet on each side of the sidewalk, and 10, actually we measured it yesterday, 10 feet 7 inches high.
Got it. And you, I have to say, like, you are dressed up as Santa this morning with the little glasses and the outfit. I can't resist this question. Like, how long have you been dressing up in this way? You really do look like jolly old Saint Nick, man.
Thank you. I get that a lot. I don't know why. Actually, since 2016, my wife Roxanne, Mrs. Claus, asked me to do a Christmas banquet with her employer, and we did that. And then I ended up walking through Portage Place, going over to Eaton Place at the time, and it created quite a stir. And kids came around, and we thought, hey, this is really fun. Let's dig into this, and it just exploded from there. It's every year.
I mean, your shape, your size, your glasses. You look like you've got a quality velvet outfit. Is that your real beard?
Yes, that is my real beard. Yes. Yep.
Impressive.
Yeah, I apologize. Normally, I get up every morning and I pretty it up and everything, and you kind of caught Santa in the raw, if you know what I mean.
I love that you're with us under the arches. Now let's talk about the serious stuff here. So you had this plan to do this, quite excited. How much money did you spend on it? And then when did you first start hearing complaints about these arches?
Okay, we total investment so far, we're looking at $1,855. That's $1,855. I set it up. I designed it, and then in the backyard, and moved it out. Took me 3 days to set it up here, and within 48 hours, we had a constable here. There was a 311 complaint. We pretty much know in the neighborhood we have a Grinch, and we pretty much know who it is, but we can't be 100% sure. And the constable asked me, is it movable? Oh, anything's movable time of year. And he said, you might have to take it down. Okay. Then 2 days later, he showed up again, and the same person called 311, made a complaint, and he said, okay, it's got to come down. It's got to come down by the next morning. I phoned every number I possibly could, between building permits, land design, everything possible to see if I could get this done. And I was running into zero.
So let me interject for a second. What was the nature of the complaint, and why did the city say you had to take it down? Did it have to do with being on public property? Was it too bright? Like, what was the nature of why the city said this is a complaint? You have to think about what you're doing here. Possibly take it down.
Yeah, because of privacy laws, they wouldn't tell me who or what the complaint was.
Okay.
That was it. They said, sorry, privacy law. But they said it might interfere with the plowing operation. I said, at 9 feet wide, you've got a city plow that does 9 feet wide? And he said, well, they are tall. So I went down to Pacific Avenue and got the measurements, and it's 7'4" is their highest plow.
Okay.
But I was at that point, I was already at 9 feet. So it didn't seem to be a problem. Then they said, no, the obstacle we ran into was no, not going to happen, not going to be done. They wouldn't give me any cooperation whatsoever.
So how is it? You did end up securing a permit, which is why the arches are still there this morning. You're allowed to keep this. Why did that happen? Who did you reach out to, and why did that happen?
Well, I actually, reluctantly, because I'm Santa, I beg forgiveness rather than ask permission. And because that's what I found how things get done. Do something first and then see what happens from there. Well, didn't work out. So I reached out to Devi Sharma. And I said to Kathleen that was there, I says, I reluctantly calling you. I was sure I could handle this. And she said, no. I will get Devi to look into this. Well, lo and behold, Devi personally called me back an hour and a half later, and I explained what was going on. She said, okay, don't take the arches down. Let me make some calls. Then I guess the boots hit the ground, and the phones were lighting up. Next thing you know, I'm getting calls from the permit office. When can we come down and do some measurement? Well, that's what I was asking, but they wouldn't talk to me before. So Devi Sharma in her excellence of customer satisfaction, if you wish, she, stirred up the pot and got things going.
So this because initially they weren't responding to you. So this is your area councillor, just so people know in that part of Winnipeg, Devi Sharma, who went to bat for you. I do have to ask you a bit of a push question here. We've done interviews in the show where like the city will go into someone's backyard if there's a bylaw and they'll like cut the grass even, or they'll like make a huge issue over other things that are happening on public property. I'm wondering what your response is to that. Like someone might say, well, this isn't fair. It is over a sidewalk. Do you think the city should lighten up overall with their bylaws? What's your sense of that there's a sort of an imbalance here?
You know what? I get it. And here's where I have to understand. The city had nothing on file. What crazy person would spend, $1,800 and put arches over a sidewalk? Santa, that's who. And, so they didn't have anything on file. They had there was no template. There was no nothing. So I can understand from the city's standpoint that this is precedent setting, and going forward, there's, somebody as crazy as I am, that's going to say, hey, I want to put arches over my sidewalk. So now they've got a template and they can say, okay, this is what you got to do. And so I get it from their standpoint. They got to do what they got to do.
Well, right now you have set the precedent. There's the arches, and they're in the neighborhood for people to enjoy. Why don't we end with what you've heard positively from people in the neighborhood since you've got this all up, Bruce? Or Brad, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I've got all the neighbors. All the neighbors on both sides are ecstatic about it. We have literally most of the street is all lit up now. We have a traffic flow. We're the Wellington Crescent, or the West St. Paul of the Santa Wonderland of Winnipeg. So the response is unbelievable. The people are coming by all times, and I tell them come by at night. It simply opens up and it lights up the whole neighborhood. And take pictures, take videos. We have international people. We picked up a reporter from the airport yesterday from Philadelphia that's actually coming down tonight to do his spiel, to send it back to his editor. We've got a group of 26 people with disabilities coming in. They're actually going to be here on Friday. They're coming by on Monday, on a Santa Christmas tour. So
you're already a new attraction in the city.
Oh yeah, it's turned into holy smokes.
Thank you so much, Brad, for being up early with us this morning and for being under the arches. We appreciate it. I feel like I should say bye Santa and not bye Brad, so I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you tell everybody the real name, then you're on the naughty list. I'm just kidding. You know what? we have a naughty list of 1 through 5. It's in the movie. And everybody's on the naughty list or 1. But here's the nice thing. How you get on the nice list? Just do a good deed that day, and you're on the nice list. And Santa's watching. Santa's watching.
Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, my dear. You have a fantastic day, and Merry Christmas at Winnipeg and the entire country that CBC covers.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's our first Merry Christmas on air. That is Santa, a.k.a. Brad Wallace. He's known as McAdam Santa. He lives out on McAdam. They actually have a new sidewalk out there. Our story, though, was into the bylaws and into the restrictions and into the complaints that can happen in neighborhoods at this time of year. And when we're all decorating our yards, right, or those people who do so, you might be coming up against some of these things. So this is an interesting case that, as he said, is in his view, the first of its kind. I don't remember reporting on anything like this before. He created these huge arches across his sidewalk. You can check out his house. As he said, he's opening it up to public viewing. That's at 742 McAdam Avenue in Garden City. We did reach out to Councillor Devi Sharma, by the way. We just did not hear back in time for the interview.